everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is the beginning of a reading vlog. Basically, for the month of June, I'm planning on reading exclusively queer reads, and my theme for this month of reading is to read queer sports books. Some of them are a little bit more removed from sports. Some of them are actual queer sports stories, but I'm really excited for this theme. I'm excited to have fun with this. A really good queer sports story just ticks off so many boxes for me. A lot of times what you see in just sports stories in general is found family, you have rivalries, you have enemies, you have teammates. So you have all these different types of relationship dynamics, people getting along, people not getting along, people learning to get along. And it just really makes a great background for somebody growing into their own, a coming of age story, someone growing in confidence, someone learning to face obstacles, someone learning to fall in love. It's just a really good background for a lot of things that I like found family, rivalries, character-driven stories. And when you have queer sports stories, it's just a really interesting combination, because a lot of what I think makes a really good queer story or queer coming of age story is, again, those really interesting relationship dynamics. Romances that start from a place of teammates or friendships or rivalries or enemies are always really interesting. It's so interesting because I feel like sports stories especially in anime, has become such a ubiquitous background for same-sex relationships, whether that be platonic or romantic. It's a really good background for those kind of relationships and learning to get along with other people that are different from your own. But in the real world, sports are a really contentious place for a lot of queer people, a very dangerous place for a lot of people, whether that be as an observer of sports or as a player. People are really going after trans people in sports, but it can be really difficult to be on a team or in a sport field that is very homophobic and just being closeted or out. And so I feel like queer sports stories have this place where they can really have joy and really explore different types of relationships, but it's also a place where we can talk about the real world harm, the systemic harm that a lot of these spaces invite and kind of heighten. So just in general, the sporting world is really interesting to me because it has this really complicated dynamic of being a place that is kind of difficult to be a part of, but also a place where a lot of queer people find joy. But anyway, we're starting this vlog on the 7th because I finally got my Barnes & Noble package in the mail with all of the reads that I'm planning on reading for this month. I do already have 2 books. On the 31st, I believe, or the 1st, I went to Barnes & Noble and picked up 2 books that I had on my to-be read list. Again, there's a video to check out all of those books if you want to know more about this kind of project I'm doing. But I have Spinning by Tilly Walden, which is a graphic memoir, and I also have Icebreakers. And this is a new release, and it is about ice hockey. I don't really know anything about it because I haven't heard anybody talking about it, but I'm really excited for it. And I actually am waiting on an audiobook for this, which will hopefully be here in the next couple weeks. So we will hold off on this one, but let's get into the unboxing. So if you watched my to be read list, you know I have 15 books that I could have chosen from. I had a Barnes & Noble gift card, so I just went online and picked up a bunch of books because I did want the hardcover editions of a lot of these. I wouldn't say I picked up at random, but I didn't pick all of the books that I could have read. So hopefully the ones that I did pick out, I will be able to read and finish this month, and then I can go back to my TBR list and pick up more stuff if I need to. But the first book I see right on top is Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Karam. I have already read this book because, again, it's June 7th. I've been waiting on this package for a little bit, and I almost got this at the Barnes & Noble, but again, I wanted this in hardcover, especially because I want both this and the sequel book, so I want them to match and be pretty next to each other. We also have 2 of the graphic novels I wanted to pick up. We have Cheer, and then we have The Breakaways. I've heard good things about this. I don't know if this one is a standalone or not, but I'm excited to kind of check it out. I think the graphic novels will be good little breaks in between books for me. I also picked out the Fence book. I love the graphic novel series for this. I do think it's a little weird that another author is writing these books, but I trust this author because I do love her own standalone novel. I also have Anna on the Edge, and this is a middle grade. This is another one that I have waiting on an audiobook, so hopefully by the end of this month I will have this out. And then lastly, we have the 2 big hitters, I would say, the 2 that have been very popular on BookTube in the last year, and that will be May the Best Man Win and She Drives Me Crazy. This is a sapphic sports story about basketball and cheerleading, and this one is a male or Achillean story, and it is about football players, and I believe one of them is trans. These are some of the books on my TBR, some of the books that I'm planning on reading in this next month. I don't know how long this vlog is going to be, but I am excited. I tried to pick a wide variety of stuff, so stuff that is more romance leaning, some stuff that's more hard hitting, graphic novels to break stuff up. But yeah, I'm really excited about this stack of books. So let's talk about Darius the Great, since this is the first book that I read. So Darius the Great is the first book in now a duology. This was originally a standalone, but it got a sequel, which I also want to pick up. Maybe not this month, but I do want to pick it up soon because I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and this is all about our main character, Darius. He is half Persian, and he's never really met his Persian family because they still live in Iran, but he learns that his grandfather's tumor is getting a lot worse, and so his family quickly plans a visit so that they can visit him and his grandma and the rest of his family. The sport aspect in this story comes along with Darius has played soccer in the past, but he stopped playing due to his depression because during that time he was getting diagnosed with chronic depression and dealing with new medication, and so he dropped out of sports. The sport in this is not the most important aspect, but it is kind of the thing that connects Darius to his new friend. Basically, Darius's grandparents have a family friend neighbor who they are very close with, who has a son the same age as Darius. This young man's name is Sorab, and Sorab and Darius instantly have a very close connection, and it's kind of their story about building their friendship. And we have a couple scenes where they are playing soccer with some other boys, and Darius kind of gaining a little bit of confidence from that. There is a little bit of a through line with the soccer, but it's not the most important part. The big thing is just Darius connecting with his family, connecting with his roots, growing this lifelong friendship, and then connecting with his father because they do not have a really strong relationship. Darius struggles with his depression, which he shares with his father, but that's not really a connecting point for them. And Darius struggles a lot with bullying and with his body image because he is fat. So yeah, this book is really just about connections, platonic, familial. There's a little bit of the sports, and this book only deals a little bit with the queerness. It's very hinted at that Darius has not come out of the closet, that maybe even to himself, but it's never clearly stated in those words. And the second book will deal more with that, I believe, so I'm really excited to read the second book. But this first book, it really worked for me. It was a coming of age story, a young man growing into his own. It's really centered on the familial relationships, the connections. I instantly put all 3 of this author's work on my TBR list. He has the sequel, of course, but there is a new book that recently came out, which I believe is about a boy band with a trans character. I believe. I'm not quite sure, but I'm excited for that one too because I've heard good things about it, and I really enjoyed Karam's writing. It's just really, really great. This is a first-person story, and recently I haven't really loved first-person. I can understand why a teen reader, why myself as a teen would have loved first-person and why I loved first-person as much as I did, but I haven't really connected with it as much. I feel like a lot of times the writing can be a lot weaker in first-person stories, but this really, really worked for me. I really liked being with Darius in his head, and I still thought the writing really shone. But yes, this is definitely a book I would recommend. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited again for more stuff by this author, so this was a perfect way to start off Pride Month. So now I'm going to pick up my laundry, and then I will get to picking what I'm going to read next. So it is the next day, so I thought I would talk about Cheer Up, which I read last night. This is a very short graphic novel, and it's basically following these 2 main characters on the cover. This is Bibi, who is a trans girl. She's basically just like a people pleaser, and she doesn't know how to say no to people. And then Annie is our other main character, who is a very antisocial, angry, raging teenager, and kind of has put herself in a hole because she doesn't have really any friends because she kind of is so mean and says no too much. Her big thing is that she needs some extracurricular activities on her college application forms, so her mom and the principal kind of get her into joining the cheer team, which of course Bibi is a part of. And so it's their love story, their friendship, as well as them joining this team and then dealing with their own little storylines. But that being said, it's like 128 pages, and it's all of those storylines plus like a lot more, and I just don't think it was fleshed out enough to be really satisfying. This comic just tried to cover way too many story beats, too many storylines, and it just wasn't super successful. And along with that, especially in the beginning, I think there were a lot of really big pacing issues. I don't think it was super successful in pacing the story and kind of giving you information. I think this would have been a lot more successful if it was longer, as well as having like chapter breaks or something to help with the flow of the story, to kind of break up the story and show like the progression of time, the progression of events, that kind of stuff, to let you know when like a new scene is happening rather than just skipping to a new page. So I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. It was cute, it gave me a little sporty queer love, but it wasn't my new favorite comic, unfortunately. So yes, I would recommend this. I think people would love it. It's cute, fun, sweet, short, but it's not my personal new favorite thing. But because of that book, I was really craving more cheerleader action, more queer girls, and so I picked up She Drives Me Crazy, which is about a lesbian basketball player named Scotty, who has recently been broken up with by her girlfriend, who decides to go to another high school in the area. Because of this breakup, she's had like some self-esteem issues. Her girlfriend also just like wasn't the best person, and the other big point is like the team, her basketball team, is really struggling and they don't really feel supported by the rest of the high school like some of the other sports do. And so this starts a whole crazy plan where Scotty and her arch nemesis Irene decide that they are going to fake date to help out Irene with some money stuff, and then to help out Scotty by having the cheer squad, you know, they're supporting them and just making her more popular in general, which also will drive her girlfriend up a wall. So there's a lot going on. It's a really like kooky plot. I will say there is some stuff that doesn't feel true to life, or at least how I remembered in high school. There is some stuff that is a little off the walls, a little kooky, but I am overall really loving this. Like so far this is like 4.5 star territory. It's just a really super fun rom-com. I really love Irene. She's kind of like the bitchy cheerleader character. I love Scotty as well. She's a little like not like other girls, but she is consistently being called out by Irene for her like judgmentalness, and I love it. And yeah, this book is just, it's really cute, it's really fun. I can like imagine the scenes in my head so perfectly. I think this would be perfect for a rom-com, especially because it calls reference to and reminds me of so many romantic comedy movies. It's kooky. It would work so well as like an indie rom-com on Netflix, and I love it. I love it so much. And last night I was able to read 172 pages of this, so yes, I'm flying through it. So yes, my third book is going great. I am loving this. So as far as other plans for today, I am doing my regular stuff, working on social media, all of that stuff, applying to jobs, all of that fun stuff. And once I get a little more work done, then I can move back to reading my book. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff happening here. So it is a little bit later in the evening now, and a little while ago I finished She Drives Me Crazy, and I loved this. This is a 4-star read. It was cute. It was fun. It felt like watching a rom-com teen movie. We got the angst, we got the characters growing and learning, they had great support systems, we got the cute romance. There is a misunderstanding plotline, but it's a little bit different than I initially thought it was going to be. A little bit of a spoiler alert, the characters that are in this fake relationship kind of realize and acknowledge to each other that they're feeling something, and the main character Scotty admits that like she's still kind of hung up on her ex and like she's still having a hard time. And so through the end of the book, it's all about her kind of taking a step back and like really figuring stuff out for herself. And so I really appreciated like how the conflict was kind of put forward, because it was like less a big misunderstanding and more just like messy, you know, messy teen stuff that people had to figure out, feelings and stuff. But yes, this was adorable. It was a 4 out of 5 star read. Again, some parts of it were corny, cheesy, but overall it really worked. It was really cute, and again, I can really see like this as a movie or TV series. It really worked. The pacing was great in here. We got a little bit of sports, we got some basketball games, which is what I've been looking for in a sports story. But yes, this is like a perfect teen rom-com story. And so far, this is the most closely tied to sports that I've gotten in this month, but I'm still not quite satisfied with the sportiness quite yet. I've loved all of these stories and I've loved the aspect of like high school life with sports, but I'm still looking for that perfect sports story. This got me like halfway there because there was like that rivalry, that enemies dynamic, that fake relationship, and we got, you know, some banter, some angsty characters, but I'm still waiting for that in the sport. So I think now is a great time to talk about why I came to love sports stories and what form I came to love them from. So I, like many people, came to love sports stories through anime. Sports anime is a very popular genre, and with the sports anime genre there is a very particular set of tropes. There is a very particular like story arc and story beats that a lot of these stories hit. Honestly, a lot of times those tropes is what makes me love the stories. When sports animes are done well, they're set up to kind of hit a lot of really good story beats and to really show the progression of its characters and to have you really fall in love with the characters and the sports they're playing. But even with the sports anime demographic, there is a little bit of a different focus for a lot of different sports anime. I think there's 4 different points that sports anime typically hit. Most good sports animes, I would say, like cover all 4 bases, but normally most anime lean into one kind of category. So for sports animes, there is the sports anime that relies like on the technical stuff about playing the sport. So you get a lot of information about the people playing the sport. You learn a lot about what it means to play the sport, how to play the sport. I would say there's not any sole anime I can think of that only relies on this, mostly because it would be pretty boring if you didn't care about the characters, but there are animes that talk you through the sport more than others, and I think this is a really big factor for me in whether I will like the sports anime or not, because for me, I actually enjoy watching the sports in the anime format, and I have to care about it. And if I don't know enough to care about the sports stuff and to understand when someone is making a really big leap in their progression as a player, then it doesn't really matter to me. Even if the characters are explaining how dramatic and big this moment is, if you haven't shown me throughout the entire season why this particular move or thing that you're doing is important, and I haven't seen like the progression of that person learning how to do that thing, then it doesn't really matter. So the technical side of sports anime is very important, and it's not always in every sports anime. I think a lot of other sports anime watchers, like, this is not the most important factor for them. They don't really care about the sports part. I know one of my friends that likes Yuri on Ice didn't care about the ice skating. Well, I very much did. The other big thing that you will see in sports anime is the drama aspect, getting a lot of like the character's home life. This is like the emotional side, the drama of what this sport internally means to the character that's playing it. So oftentimes you'll see a lot of like angsty storylines, and this is like more the internal struggles of the characters and how it relates to their daily lives. So there could be a sports anime that doesn't tell you anything about the sport, you don't really get to learn about it, and it's more this character having these dramatic moments while they happen to be a part of a sports team. But if you want a well-rounded sports anime, the drama is very important. You want there to be stakes, there to be risks. You want the characters to have some kind of connection to their past about why they're doing the things that they're doing, why the thing matters so much. So it's not to be taken lightly. I typically don't like when sports anime heavily leans into drama above all else, but it is an important aspect. The next big pillar you will see for sports anime is comedy. A lot of sports animes are a comedy. This could be in a couple different ways, where it's just a lot of antics of the teammates interacting with each other, or you can get like straight up parody, goofy kind of anime. This I tend to think of like a Kuro no Basket. In Kuro no Basket, basically everybody has like almost superpowers. It's not really realistic about how you play basketball, and a lot of people just want these kind of sports animes where the sport doesn't really matter as much, the character dynamics don't matter as much, the character dramas don't matter as much, and just having a good time, having funny antics. You will see a lot of vignette style sports animes like this as well. For me, I do like when sports animes are funny, but this is the least important pillar to me. I'm not a comedy gag based anime person. I don't really like vignette gag style anime, and so I tend to not like sports that rely heavily on parody or that kind of thing. But the final pillar, what I would argue my favorite and most important pillar, is character development and character dynamics. So this is where you're getting the progression of the main character, you're seeing their character growth, their character arcs, and it's tied really closely to them playing the sport and learning the sport. And of course, the character dynamics, rivalry, teammates, characters that don't get along, characters that do, characters that learn to get along. Again, this is a really important aspect to me, and I think this is what makes sports anime for me. I need to like the main character. I need to care about their journey. I need to care about their dynamics with the teammates. For me, a lot of sports animes fall short because while the characters are interesting, they're normally kind of blank canvases, and I would say this kind of prong is also a really big deal with pacing. Sports animes can be one season, they can be one season in a movie, and they can be multiple seasons, but how you set up and pace the character's story arc and their journey throughout their seasons is very, very important. And I can normally tell from the pacing of the first couple episodes if a sports anime is going to be good or not, because if you're not setting up those characters well, if you're not setting up that story arc well, it's going to either lag throughout the entire show or it's going to be very unfocused. So those are kind of the four major points: character, comedy, drama, and technique. And for me, I would like to have all four of these things in an anime, but for me, like, the things that make great sports anime are when you have really good developed characters, when I like those characters enough to laugh at any of their antics, when the drama and interplay between characters, their family, their home lives, whatever it is, really sells the story and sells the stakes of the story, and where you get me to care about a sport that I don't necessarily care about or know about when I begin the story. And so when I see the character progressing and using the techniques that they learned, it means something at the end of the story. So I watched a lot of sports animes. Someday I want to make a tier listing video talking about all the sports anime that I've watched, but I will kind of do a top 5 just so you can kind of understand the kinds of sports stories that I am looking for and talking about. My number 5 choice is Ballroom A Yokozo, which is a ballroom dancing anime. Unfortunately, the author has been sick over the past couple years or has just been on hiatus. I think they are dealing with an illness. I hope someday that this story gets completed either in manga or anime format, and I'm praying for the author's safety and health. But Ballroom as Yokozo is just a fantastic example of what a sports anime can do. It teaches you about the sport. It has really lovable characters and really great dynamics between the characters. Season 2 is just mind-blowingly good, and it has one of my favorite characters of all time, one of my favorite female characters in sports anime. And when I was watching Ballroom A Yokozo for the first time, I was really nervous because in the first season, while I liked those female characters, I was waiting for a female character that stood on her own, had her own motivations, was not really backing up the main character, had her own plotline story, because to that point, while again we had really interesting female characters, they were more props to the male main character. But oh my god, that second season, that main girl, I care about her so much. She is so well done, and it really, really made the anime for me, and I highly recommend it because it's one of my favorite animes of all time. Another one of my favorites, we have Chihaya Furu, which currently has 3 seasons, and this follows a very unique sport. This is the sport of karuta, which is a card game, but it is a sport. It's very difficult to describe, but basically it's a sport based on the 100 poems of Japan, and basically how you play this game is that you have a reader who is reading out the poems, and you are playing against your opponent, and you're trying to touch the second half of that poem before your player does. Like, literally, I'm American. I've never heard of karuta. Nobody plays karuta outside Japan, really. There's no possible way we could know anything about this, but the show explains it so well so that you care so much about this sport, that you care so much about these characters playing this sport. And because it's set in high school, you have the teammates, the dynamics, the rivals. It is just so good. Our main character is so funny and so interesting. This show is a female-driven sports anime, and it is one of the best out there. It's got the romance, it's got the drama, it's got the great fleshed out side characters. Everything about this show is perfect. It has been my favorite since I watched it in like 2014, and I've rewatched it so many times. Highly, highly recommend it. Another one of my favorites in my top 5 is Run with the Wind. This is a running like relay anime, and it's about a college team of boys and this one dude who is I think he's a senior, and he just really wants to run this special race that only happens in Japan, that happens on New Year's Day, I believe. And it's this like very important like fun college race thing. And so it's about him making this team, trying to qualify these players, and he's able to get his last player by basically running down this kid who's like running away after stealing something because he can't afford to provide for himself. And this anime is so good. It has a queer undertone. I definitely think you can read this as a queer story and that it's meant to be read as a queer story. It's so good. It's got the technique. It talks about running. It has the characters preparing and learning. It has the teammates, the dynamics, the drama. We learn so much about all of these characters. It really fleshes them out. And the main two characters, I just especially really love their dynamic. I love them and just like how much they grow in the series. It's a top-notch series. Of course, I can't make this list without recommending Haikyuu. Haikyuu reigns supreme. It is just one of those animes that's one of the best animes. It's in my top 10 animes. Again, it gets you to care about volleyball. It teaches you about it. It teaches you the techniques. It teaches you and shows you how these characters have grown and gotten better. It has the character dynamics. Any kind of character dynamic you could possibly want, it has it, and it does it so well. It fleshes out all these side characters. I watched this and I cared about every single character. Literally, there's like 60, 80 plus characters in Haikyuu, and I somehow love all of them, even like the bad ones. I love them. Haikyuu is just a wonderfully developed show. It's a comfort show that I tend to watch every summer. I love it. And the final anime, of course, that I have to recommend is Yuri on Ice. Yuri on Ice is one of my favorite, if not my favorite anime. It is for nostalgic reasons. It is for when I watched it reasons. I was watching it as it came out, which was such a crazy year. It instantly became my favorite comfort anime, and it just instantly became an anime that I rewatch constantly because I care about it so much. Will we ever get a movie for this show? I don't know. But Yuri on Ice is an ice skating anime about a young man who is just very down on his luck because he just cannot get to the level he needs to get at to compete. And it's about him accidentally making this guy his coach. This guy that he's like had a crush on and admired for years and years and years. This is like really the show that solidified my love of sports anime stories, because this one is a queer sports story. I care so much about these characters and their dynamics, and it's a 12-episode anime. I've watched the episodes a bazillion times. I'm not kidding. So yeah, this anime, it got me through a lot. It was really important and special to me. It still is. It's one of the best, and again, it's just the perfect combination of technique, comedy, drama, and characters. And so that's the magic I'm trying to find in a book. Again, I loved stories that I've read so far. Like, this is the perfect rom-com book, like teen rom-com book. It ticked off all the boxes that I wanted. It was fun, it was cute, but I am searching for a book or graphic novel that can give me the same feelings that sports animes give me. And so far, there have really only been two that I feel like have actually achieved sports anime level, and that is Fence, which is an uncompleted graphic novel series, but feels very much like it's taking a lot from sports anime, and then Check Please. And even Check Please, as much as I love Check Please, honestly, it doesn't get enough into the hockey for me. So when I'm reading these books, I'm going to love them or hate them, not because of the sport anime thing. I'm going to love these books or hate these books based on what they were trying to do. But this is my secret goal as I am reading these books, is I am looking for that book that can really give me what I want that I get from sports anime. I'm looking for a book that is really heavily focused on the sports and talks a lot about the sports and shows the character progression through the sports and getting better. And I'm looking for those character developments and character dynamics. I want the teammates, the rivalries, the people that don't get along, and the people that learn to get along. So that being said, let's talk about the next book I'm going to read. So I think I am going to pick up the next Fenced book. So the Fence graphic novel series is the series that has come the closest to being like a sports anime and ticking off all of those boxes that I'm looking for. So I'm hoping that the Fence book series will come close to that. I don't know. I remember when these books were announced, like, it just, the way they talked about them was really confusing and how they related to Fence. So I don't know, we will see, but I don't think I'm gonna start this tonight. Actually, because I talked about my favorite sports animes tonight and just kind of had a gush session about them, I think what I'm going to do is have a random generator decide which sports anime I'm going to rewatch tonight, because I need some of it. I need some. So I made one of those little wheel things on the internet, and we are going to spin and see what anime I get to watch tonight. I did not include Run with the Wind because I believe I've watched it recently. Let us see. Oh my god. Oh god. Oh yeah, I'm actually really excited. Okay. I really feel like this is a sign because I was really in between rewatching Haikyuu and Ballroom e Yokozo and Chihaya Furu. Let's be real. Okay, it's hard to pick, but I was really feeling Ballroom e Yokozo when I was talking about it, so I'm really excited to go rewatch it now. I'm realizing this isn't a great pick for this month because only Yuri on Ice is truly a gay sports anime, and Run with the Wind only hints at it very minimally, probably because they weren't allowed to do it or didn't think they were going to be allowed to do it. And of all of them, besides like Chihaya Furu, Ballroom e Yokozo is probably one of the straightest. Honestly, there's still gay vibes. I will say this. In my mind, there are still gay vibes, but it's fine. It's gonna give me the sports. That's all I'm looking for right now, the sports. So the plot thickens. It's like here on Crunchyroll, but you can't watch it, and I can't find it in the Crunchyroll app or on the Funimation app, so I'm very confused. I'm thinking that it's getting acquired by Crunchyroll or some other provider, and it's just like not officially there yet. But oh, this makes me want to watch it even more because I'm very confused. It's literally not available anywhere. Oh my god, what is happening? I like can't even buy it on Apple Plus. I have no idea what's going on with the licensing right now. But I guess I'm just gonna watch a very crappy version in a different type of watching site. I think I'll be able to find it somewhere. Legally, of course. I'm very confused right now. I really hope it comes to Hulu very soon or Netflix. I don't want this anime to die in obscurity. It's so good. Ugh, this is so weird. So it's 2 a.m. and I've finally gotten through the first 11 episodes of Welcome to the Ballroom, which means it's finally time to introduce my favorite character. There she is! My bitch! Oh my god, I love her so much. Ugh, oh my god, I love this opening. I am so hyped. Okay, I'm gonna stay up for another hour and watch this because I can't. I love it so much. Every time I finish it, I'm just waiting for more, wanting more. So I took off yesterday to complete rewatching Ballroom e Yokozo, and it's just as good as every other time I've rewatched it. I really do love that show and highly recommend it if you can find it. But today I just started reading Fence Striking Distance. I'm about 2 chapters in, and I hate to be saying this, but it is so bad. Like, it is just so poorly written. It's not the worst thing I've ever read, but the writing is really clunky, both the narration and the dialogue. It sounds like robots speaking to each other, and the narration, again, is just really clunky, like extra words in there. The sentences are not ordered in a way that makes sense. It's really off-putting, and it's really bad because I do want to read both of these novels. But what I did was I went to my library and I put myself on the waiting list for the audiobook, which will hopefully come soon, because I don't know if I can read this physically. It literally is, it is not good so far. Maybe it gets better, maybe the audiobook experience will help, but I'm gonna put this aside because I cannot get in a slump from trying to read this physically. And so that leaves me with Spinning, The Breakaways, which are both graphic novels, and then May the Best Man Win. Those are my physical read picks. The other books that I have are the ones that I was planning on reading audiobook or both audiobook and physically. I'm thinking I might pick up The Breakaways just because a graphic novel sounds like what I need right now. But yeah, hopefully I will be able to come back to this and read it, and hopefully the audiobook will help. It's not looking promising. Oh no. Oh, this is so bad. I'm so sad about this. So it is a little bit later and I finished reading The Breakaways pretty quickly. This was a pretty solid 3-star graphic novel for me. I think I liked it a little bit more than Cheer Up because it was a little bit longer, so it got to be a little bit better paced. But again, this was cute, it was fun, but it wasn't like my new favorite graphic novel of all time. So this follows a soccer team, and this is kind of like the junior varsity or like freshman team on a middle school team. So basically like all the rejects soccer players go to this team. And so they're really bad at soccer, they do not get along, they're not really friends with each other. It's very like small cliquey and lots of loners, and our main character is pretty much a loner, a 5th grader who is new to the team and like trying to fit onto this social outcast team. And so we kind of get like snapshots of everybody on the team and like kind of the problems that they're dealing with. And honestly, I thought this worked in a lot of really good ways. There were a lot of characters, but just the way that it was able to set you up and introduce you to the characters very quickly, I thought worked really well. How you kind of weave in and out of everybody's stories, getting a little snapshot about everybody's life worked really well. The main character doesn't really fit in, doesn't really have friends, and so she kind of uses her imagination or her daydreaming as a way to escape. And so you get like little snapshots of her daydreaming, and it's kind of very metaphorically connected to what she's dealing with. And like, this wasn't perfect. It could have been longer. It could have fleshed out some stuff. I honestly think some of the characters probably should have been a little bit older, but overall this like really worked for me. I thought it really did a good job, and I kind of really liked the ending that this landed on. I thought it was a cute little story. But yes, there's queer characters, there's sports, and this was cute and fun, and I really enjoyed it, and it was a good little break from the last book. But besides that, I'm going to eat dinner, and I think I'm going to start rewatching Haikyuu because I need some happiness in my life. I need some Haikyuu, and Haikyuu always makes me happy. It's a bad idea because it's a very long series, and it will take me several days to watch the entire thing if I end up deciding to watch the whole thing. But it's one of my favorite shows for a reason, so I'm going to watch it. And I watch it in sub, actually. I feel like I'm one of the only people that doesn't watch it in dub. I'm just a sub over dub kind of girl. I have nothing against dubbing. Both of my best friends only watch shows in dub pretty much, but I'm a sub girl. I started watching anime in 7th grade. I started watching through sub, and so it just feels weird to me to watch things in dub. I don't know. I think that experience of like having to sit down and pay very close attention to something is really good for me. It's like one of the only things where I can really be hyper focused right now, especially I've just been struggling over the past couple of years to really remain really focused on something for more than like 10 minutes. Anime is like one of the only ways that I can really do it when I do really like a show. Like I can really like just sit, get sucked into something and like pay attention to it and not look at my phone and just not get distracted and not like kind of wander off in my brain. So yes, I think this is what I need right now. I just need a little distraction from social media and just other things. So that's what I'm gonna do. It is now the 14th of June, and I didn't vlog this last weekend because my mom was visiting me and I just wanted to, you know, spend time with her and have a good time and just not think about vlogging, so that's what I did, and we had a really fun time. We went to the botanical gardens, had a picnic in Central Park yesterday, which was really nice, and we also went to Brooklyn and visited Books Are Magic, which is a bookstore that I've wanted to visit but just never made my way over there. So my plans for this week are of course to continue reading. I have to catch up on some Goodreads reviews that I want to write, want to continue doing photos and TikTok and all of that. My life is literally just books, surrounded by books. And then the next week on Wednesday, I'm actually leaving for a trip to visit my friend in Arizona. My roommate, Dan, actually has like a conference type thing that just happens to be very close to where my friend lives. And since we all went to college together and were roommates our senior year, we decided that I would also fly out after my roommate's conference, and then we could all meet up in Arizona for a couple days over the weekend. So yes, that is something to look forward to. So I just want to prepare for that and read and stuff for that. So yesterday while I was in the park, I started reading Anna on the Edge, and I finished it last night. This is by AJ Sass, and this is all about a young figure skater named Anna, and it's her kind of figuring out her identity, that she is non-binary. I really enjoyed this. This is a middle grade, but it was just really expertly crafted, really well done. I really enjoyed it and the discussions this book had. This dealt with a lot of different conflicts, both Anna's internal conflict as well as her like skating routine, her skating stuff. It dealt with her making a new friend, trying to keep up with her old friend, moving skating rinks, dealing with her mom, having to worry about like financial stuff. It just covered so many topics, but it did it so well, and it just really wove together into a really beautiful story. I will say the kind of switch for Anna realizing that she was non-binary was a pretty big switch. She is really questioning her identity throughout the first half of the novel. As soon as she sees the word non-binary, she like immediately like knows that's her. I know some people figure it out right away. Not saying necessarily that Anna needed to have that journey, but for me, I felt like it just needed a second more for her to like internally process stuff and then be like, yes, that is right. Literally like a paragraph. The other big thing is that, you know, Anna is realizing that she is in some ways trans, and then she is also making a friend who she knows is trans. At the beginning of the novel, she has like no idea what transness is. She's like never heard of this before, which I feel like is, you know, a good thing to read from the perspective of. But as soon as she like figures out non-binary, again, there is like a sudden knowledge of transness. And I feel like there must have been a scene or, again, a paragraph or something where Anna is like going through trans identities or like reading about it on the internet, and I just felt like a little bit more knowledge was missing. It just feels like a little scene was cut out somewhere. Overall, this book is really approachable. Just a really good story, a really good coming of age story. I really loved the sporting aspect. AJ Sass obviously knows a lot about figure skating, and he did a really good job of explaining it and just kind of going through the routines. I really liked how they introduced it. And overall, this was just really well written too. It was just a really, really well crafted, well written story, and I highly recommend it. And again, I found it very enjoyable as a 26-year-old reading this, and I know my younger self would have also loved to have read this. And I think what I'm going to do is start again on Striking Distance, this time with an audiobook, and we are going to give that another try. I am currently reading or listening to that, and I'm about halfway through the book now. And I can say that the audiobook has significantly improved my experience of reading this. The dialogue and the narration especially just reads a lot less clunky when it's being read out. There are some like dialogue beats that I do feel like still feel a little like robotic or just like not human, but overall it has been, at least writing wise, a significant improvement. But I am still not loving this. The author's interpretations of the characters are very interesting, but I'm not even sure if it's the author's interpretations or if it's more trying to take a story from a comic and put it into fiction. I think that's more where the problem is lying with this book, because in the comic things are a little chaotic. It very much feels like reading a manga, and the authors of the comic have talked about how they've been really influenced by manga and anime. And I feel like that really comes through in the comic, and it makes sense and it works. So like having over-the-top characters that, you know, sometimes do something silly, it just comes off very comedic in the comic and it just kind of works. But when you're directly in the character's head, in narration, just like seeing these over-the-top characters, it doesn't necessarily work in the same way. So the big thing about the characters, I would say, is that Nicholas just doesn't always know what's going on. He grew up in an environment where he's very poor, probably didn't get like the best education, but he has a lot of street smarts. And in this book, he just like misses the conversation, like misses what people are talking about. He doesn't know like what certain words are. He just comes off as like a very ADHD kid. The kind of naivety that made him just like really charming in the comic, especially reading his chapters, his narrations, it's just making him read like naive, like a 12-year-old kid or like even younger who just doesn't understand the way the world works. And like some of it, yeah, I guess it does make sense that he doesn't know how like the rich society works, but like some of it just feels like overly dense. Like I'm like, this kid is supposed to be street smart. I feel like he would understand how the world works. I really love how Nicholas is so out of place in this story. That's like one of my favorite things. I think it really works for his character. But I would say in the comic, he doesn't feel like he doesn't understand things, you know? Like in this book, it feels like he does not understand conversations that are being had around him. And the other character big thing is how Seiji is portrayed. I've always thought he was neurodivergent, but especially in this book, he is coming off of as very autistic, to the point like where he is just like does not understand social interactions. His whole personality is that he's kind of cold. He has like a stick up his butt, very like needs to do things in his own way. Some things honestly are very relatable neurodivergent wise, because he's talking about like how things need to be on a schedule, how it bothers him when things change, how he doesn't understand social interactions, and how he like misunderstands conversations and ends up offending people. It just feels like the kind of autistic person that you would see written by like a teenager on AO3 and not necessarily like with good representation. And like I was kind of like fiddling around trying to find if the author intended Seiji to come off as autistic or neurodivergent, and it has been addressed in an interview. They implied Seiji was not autistic by saying that another character is, and they're gonna wait for that representation to come forward. But this book is really not helping that case. He really comes off as neurodivergent, but again, not in always the best way. Again, very much like Nicholas, he does not understand the conversations that are happening around him. He's like very dense to situations. And you get a lot of these dense kind of characters in anime, and sometimes they can come off as like really funny when they are naive to situations or just don't know what's going on. But to see it physically written in a book, and especially to be reading it from that person's narration, it just doesn't come off well. It just makes the characters seem, again, really naive, stupid, in a really weird way. And I would say Seiji is a really self-aware person. He like knows that he doesn't understand things always, or that he doesn't care about social interactions or doesn't get along with people. I don't know, it's just something is not working here. To me, Seiji is very similar to Kageyama from Haikyuu. If you know Haikyuu at all, Kageyama is kind of lumped in with the four idiots of Karasuno. Like, he is not good at school, he's not great at social interactions, and he just like is not always the smartest person. He doesn't know everything. He is like a one-track mind, only thinks about volleyball, knows a lot about volleyball, and that's it. And again, I feel like Kageyama comes off so well in the anime, and it's never like making fun of him or talking down to him. And I don't think this book is doing that with Seiji, but like they're just, I don't know, just reading from his perspective, it just doesn't work. With Haikyuu, with sports animes, and with the comic itself, you do get the internal thinkings of the characters. Sometimes you get like a little glimpse into what they're thinking. You know, you sit with the character and you get a glimpse of them, but you're never sitting with the character for the entire thing, and you're never seeing like what's going on in their brain like 24/7. And I think even in a third person perspective, seeing what's going through Seiji's brain 24/7 is just not good for this character. And I think the biggest thing is like, why did this need to be in narration? Why did this need to be in prose? And what is it adding to the story that we couldn't get from the comic? And my answer is, I don't think it's doing much. I think that this story was meant to be in comic or maybe, again, animation form. Yeah, this is like disappointing, but it has improved since the second chapter and since switching to audiobook, so I'll give it that. It has improved a little bit. So last night I finished Fence Striking Distance. It picked up a little bit when I started the audiobook. The middle I think was a little bit better, but then it slowly declined. Again, there were just these like kooky, zany plots that I feel like maybe would have worked in the comic, but just didn't work here. The characters, the way they were written, worked in the comic, didn't work here. And I think it's really just a translation issue. This is supposed to be in the comic media format, and it just doesn't work as prose. I feel like I'm gonna give the second book a try just because I already bought it and I can't return it, but this was just, it was not good. But after Fence Striking Distance, I decided to pick up my third and final comic or graphic novel, and that is Spinning by Tilly Walden. And this is a graphic memoir talking about Tilly's young adult life, mainly when she's like 12, 13, a little bit of high school as well. And it follows her as she is growing up and doing ice skating and like just the kind of feelings that she has, especially because she knows from a young age that she is a queer woman. My camera was running out of batteries, so I switched to my phone. But anyway, Spinning, graphic memoir. It was really, really good. This really captured like the loneliness of young adulthood, especially when you feel like you don't fit in and you don't really understand why you're doing certain things. And I really liked how it talked about ice skating and like the way that she used ice skating to like form the narrative. I thought Tilly Walden was older than me, but we're actually born in the same year, so we're the same age. And so it was really interesting just like, you know, reading from somebody that has some similar experiences to me, grew up around the same time. There was a lot of references to things that obviously I grew up in my childhood. I don't know, she just really captured this feeling that I also have felt in my life, and I highly, highly recommend this. I gave this 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's a pretty chunky read, so I feel like it's really does a good job of fleshing everything out. So yes, these are the books that I have read so far. 7, I believe. That's a pretty good number. And let's look at what I have left. So my options left are Disarmed. This one I don't know if I'll get to now. Probably not, just because I do have to read this physically because there is no audiobook. So that's really gonna drag me down. May the Best Man Win. And then Icebreakers, which I am first in line for as an audiobook from the library. So I'm just kind of waiting for this one to come in to start that. In all honesty, I think I'm just gonna take a break, take it easy, and start Icebreakers when that audiobook comes in, because it really should be any day now. Today is Friday, so we're heading into the weekend. But yes, it is the 16th of the month. We're still in the middle of the month, and I've read 7 books, so we're doing good. We are doing good. Hi everyone, so it's been a while. It's been some time for me. Basically, it is the Tuesday before my trip, and I've had a very interesting couple days. So basically, I started Icebreaker, and I read up to 50% in this book, and was really enjoying it, really liked the characters. I will discuss it in a minute, but it just wasn't the perfect book. Just things were missing, and making a video about all my favorite sports books, thinking about my sports animes, reading all these new sport books, it just filled me with the unsatiable desire to reread the Foxhole Court. I discussed this in my video about queer sports books, but this is a book I try not to bring up too much on my channel, just because I really do feel like I understand what makes the series so controversial. The characters are not all good people, and they say things that are harmful, and I understand why that is hard for some people to watch videos on. And also, these books are very triggering. They have basically every trigger that you could possibly think of. Mental health and sexuality is probably not discussed in the most healthy way, or dealt with in that most healthy way, and I get it. There's just certain books that I tend not to promote on my channel, even if I have a love for them, because of like things that the author has done, things that the books themselves have done. You know, I'm not trying to cancel these books, I'm not trying to silence them in any way. It's just, I don't need to actively promote something when there are other books that I can bring forward that don't like have those kind of issues. And so I've never really had a problem not talking about the Foxhole Court, but I feel like I have to talk about it now because I've literally spent like the last 3 or 4 days just reading it, just sitting down and not doing anything else and just reading it. And I don't know, it's a book series that scratches an itch for me so perfectly, and there's nothing else on the market like it. There's no other books where these characters are allowed to be mean and cruel and have infights with each other, where the romance is not romantic, where the characters are allowed to be really complicated and messy and contradictory but still somehow make sense. And for that to all be wrapped up in this perfect fictional sports game, which is a really big part of the plot and really important to the characters. There's literally nothing else out there. And once you read the Foxhole Court, and if you fall in love with it, not only are you not going to find any books that have that similarness that the Foxhole Court does, but also, at least for me, I can't get any of that void filled with fan fiction or anything else. I don't think fan writers write the main character very well. They tend to make the characters too soft, too nice to each other, to say things that they wouldn't say in the series canonically, to do things that they would never do. And so it's like, I don't know, there's just nothing like the Foxhole Court, and there's nothing to fill the void. But again, it just scratches this brain itch in some weird way that I need. That's all to say, I enjoyed my reread very much, even if there are some holes left at the beginning and the end that I wish were filled, even if I desperately wish this author would write more. I have my favorite Haikyuu episode waiting for me, so it's fine. So let's talk about my final book of this reading vlog, which is Icebreaker by A.L. I do not know how to pronounce this last name. I'm trying so hard. A.L. Graziati. So let's kind of recap this book. So this is an ice hockey book, and it follows 2 teammates who have basically been rivals for a very long time. Both of them want to be the first pick for the NHL draft, so they've had this rivalry for a very long time, but now joining college, they are finally on the same team, and they kind of have to rectify that. But of course, this rivalry turns into something more. And the other big character arc is that our main character is dealing with anxiety and depression. So he doesn't know what he wants from life. He doesn't know where his path is. He's always been on this hockey path, and so he's really, really trying hard to figure it out. This is a really hard book for me to rate because from the first page, I absolutely fell in love with these characters. Our main character is kind of a hockey legend from a hockey legend family, and so he kind of has this very aloof air to him, but also he's dealing with depression and anxiety and just not having a really stable support system. And so, you know, deep inside he feels just very numb, very cold, very emotionless, and he just cannot connect with people. So I immediately fell in love with him and related to him, and I was just like, oh my god. And our love interest was also really interesting as well. He's kind of the opposites in all ways, and so just seeing them clashing together, just chef's kiss perfect. This novel dropped us right into the middle of the story with not a lot of context, and just the way that information was delivered was more of a slow unraveling. And I think for this book, that was not the best, because it felt like we were on really unstable ground for a really long time trying to settle in. A lot of the first half of the book is narration, but it's not really narration of giving us backstory, or at least not the parts of the backstory that I needed. And so I don't know, I just felt like I needed those beginning moments of him joining the hockey team, of him not wanting to connect with people. We kind of know that he's not going to hockey events and that he's not really close with anybody, but months fly by in the timeline and we miss a lot of those scenes of those beginnings where people might be asking him to like hang out with him and him denying it. I don't know, I just felt like there were scenes missing and there was a lot of backstory missing, and I felt like setting us right into the story and then skipping ahead into like the important moments just didn't work for me, because I wanted to settle into these characters, and even though I enjoyed them and liked them, it was really hard to do so when we weren't given the like landing that we needed. This book is also very short, so that problem also happens at the end, I feel. Mickey has this really big emotional ending where he's dealing with his family issues as well as his depression and his relationship, and it feels pretty sudden, especially because we start to see his big drinking and depression problem, but we're just not given, at least I felt we were not given enough time to sit with that fact before he addresses it to himself. And so the ending of him having this big emotional family moment scene just felt like it needed a little bit more buildup, and then we just needed a little more fallout from that situation. The ending is pretty open-ended, which I didn't hate, but again, I just wish we had more moments. I just felt like this book could have been longer and it would have really helped the story. I really like these characters' story arcs. I liked them coming together. I liked the hockey moments. I really liked them bickering over social media and that whole aspect. So it's hard because I liked all the individual parts. I enjoyed the writing. I just felt like there was so much that needed to be fleshed out, and I would have wanted just so much more. Overall, this is one of my favorite reads, but I think I have to give it a 3.75 stars just because the characters are good, the plot arcs were good, but it just wasn't completely fleshed out. So let's wrap this up, shall we? I read 8 things in the first 20 days of June, and all of them were sportsy reads. If we want to look at standouts, She Drives Me Crazy was really cute, really fun, gave me all the rom-com feels, so I really enjoyed it. Darius the Great Is Not Okay was also a favorite for me. I just really liked Darius's story, I liked traveling with him, and I'm excited to read the sequel book to this and see where his story ends up. Icebreaker was a fan favorite for me, but it was hard to get super invested because it needed some fleshing out. So if we go through, I think we have a 4-star, a 2-star, 2.5 star. This was definitely my least favorite. Icebreaker is like a 3.75, 4-star. Darius the Great, 4-star. She Drives Me Crazy, another 4-star. Love and Pom Poms was a 3-star, solid, cute read. Breakaways was another 3 stars. And Anna on the Edge was another 4 stars, a very solid middle grade. And besides that, the Foxhole Court, I guess it's a 5 out of 5 stars again. But these are the books that I read for my queer sports reading vlog. What I've kind of learned from this experiment is that, again, I'm still waiting for my perfect queer sports book that really gets into the sports, but overall I feel like using queer sports as like a background to a romance, to a coming of age story, to a mental health journey, for some reason it just works really, really well. I'm looking for a book to do a specific thing, but I don't know if I could ever find it from a book. I think I'm only going to find it from a comic or an anime, just because of the pace that those kind of entertainment experiences go towards versus literature, but I think that's okay. Like, I think I've figured out that that's just gonna be the way it is unless I create something myself, I guess. But I really enjoyed this reading vlog. I really enjoyed getting to read all these books. It was really fun. I definitely found some favorite books, some really good books that I would recommend. And honestly, besides Striking Distance, like, this was just a fun time. Like, I really enjoyed everything I read and just the experience of reading these stories. Pride Month and getting to read all queer books just really, it really does it for me. So while this reading vlog is over, my reading for Pride will continue, which I will discuss in my June wrap-up. As a sneak peek for my trip/plane ride, I have downloaded The Passing Playbook, which I believe is a soccer trans male-male romance with a biracial main lead, so I'm looking forward to that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know some of your thoughts and opinions about these books down in the comments. I would love to discuss more with you there. I'm saying this now, I guess this is part of my ending monologue, but the algorithm is not any YouTuber's friend, so if you would like to like, comment, or if you like my content enough to want to subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later, and happy reading.